Okay, first some good news. There are still pockets of an awakening happening across some southern states, and then it's reaching to the north. There's an organization called Pulse that is getting the word out. There's a couple other organizations that are getting the word out. This writer says why 1 million people decided to change their religion in 2 hours. So they took advantage of the pandemic. They took advantage of online streaming. And this founder of Pulse says while numbers are still coming in, early estimates are projecting that more than 200 million people watched Pulse's worldwide Good Friday broadcast. Already more than 1.3 million people have responded to the gospel, indicating their desire to follow Jesus. That's more than 1 million people calling or texting one of our response centers to share their desire to change their spiritual beliefs, one of the most intimate aspects of their life, because of what Jesus offers. One call center in India that has connections to as many as 26,000 churches said it was overwhelmed with people's hunger for God. On Good Friday, we shared Christianity's central message, the love of Jesus, in 39 languages to 185 countries and 24 unique territories. It was beyond anything we ever thought possible, but it was possible because of those who have gone before us, and because, according to Ephesians 3:20, God is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. So why is this happening? Why today? I believe the global COVID-19 pandemic, political and economic uncertainty, and the reality of racism and injustice have eroded people's trust in the things of the world. I don't want to go there right yet. I want to go finish with this. Listening to other preachers, other church leaders, John MacArthur, his church has exploded over the COVID virus. Jack Hibbs's church has exploded. There's many, and by the way, those are all in California. So the worse place to live, the more the word seems to be getting out. But like I said, the pulse has reached into southern states, into a few of the northern states as well. We know that there's been a couple of revivals in Tennessee as well. So there's some good news happening. I was able to talk to Jeff and Judy Roshart this morning. I asked Jeff how the church looks in Brazil, and he said it's strong. They need Jesus. So remember, before this all started, Iran and China were the fastest growing churches, and they probably still are, but they're fast growing because they need Jesus. They can't rely on the government. They're being persecuted, and then the Lord gets the word out, and they cry out for the Lord. So the Lord is using this time in a great way. It is a great opportunity for you and I to be a part of this. Now, has our community changed? We've seen some growth in this church. We had 63 this morning, which is a good size for us. We've been in the 60s a few times lately. So, and we've got some new families coming. We've still got some others that are not coming because of their immune system. So churches can be growing, but I think the worse it is in your state or your community, the best opportunity it is for us to get hope out. Because remember, when you have a doctor and a credit card and your health and a job, you don't need God. I mean, that's kind of the idea that the Western society has gotten into in the last, let's say, 50 years or so. It's a bad place to be. So when you find out that you don't have those things and the government is not sticking up for you, then it's a good time to preach Jesus Christ, okay? I've been paying attention to some of the things that are happening in Colombia and India and Brazil and other places with the COVID. The governments aren't, it's not that they're not helping, they can't. I listened to a man who was he was a Christian. He was very charismatic. People, trusted him, and he just got along with the people. And the government said, we want you to come in and help. You're good with the people. People trust you, and we want to get them help. And so he came and he worked for the government, and then he worked to a point where there was no more help. They didn't have enough food. People started to riot, and things fell apart, and he broke down. He just broke down because he couldn't, he wanted to give good news, but he was trying to use food and benefits to try to make that happen, and they ran out. And when they ran out, remember what Jesus said, you follow me because I give you bread, in one incident. And if he didn't have bread, some of those people wouldn't have followed him. And so it was tragic. At the end of this message, I'm going to show you what John MacArthur says about that very thing, okay? So we'll get to that here in a little bit. I showed you last week, this picture had no earthquakes on it that one day. It had 0 earthquakes. And then, within a couple days, these are just all 6s. These are all 6s. And so that's quite a few in just, I think, a day or two. And then up there on the right, just off the Oregon coast, we had several 5s. And that's fairly significant up there. And then I thought I would show you this picture today. This is today's picture. And can anybody trace the fault line? Just draw a line. And the major one goes from the South Pacific and around Indonesia there, through Indonesia actually, up across India there, and up into the Middle East. And you can just draw a line clear across there. And that's just not one fault line, of course, but that is a very, very significant one. These are all 5s or above. And this is, remember what I said, that this has been happening with 4s and now 5s, that they continue to increase in numbers along the same line. There's a huge bunch of displacement, and it's just very interesting to watch. I just thought I'm going to throw this up here. There's the blood moon coming up, and I just think that we need to be careful in not getting caught up in all the blood moon issues and all these things coming up, but it will be fun to watch. I think they said portions of the West Coast will see this on the 26th. I'm not sure, we might be just out of range, but there is, God does put the sun and the moon and the stars for his times and seasons and stuff, but it's very difficult for us to understand how these play in. Now that Israel is out of, fellowship with the Lord, I'm not sure that they play a whole huge factor with us. It's really hard to nail it down, but I will say this. And this is interesting to me. Back in 2014, 2015, when there were a bunch of these, and people kind of got on board about the tetrad and all this other kind of stuff happening, and was it Revelation 13 and all this other stuff. I will say this: it got everybody's attention, or not everybody's, but a lot. And even though some kind of took it too far, some were even calling dates, some things, the rapture is going to happen, and all this other stuff, I can say this, that there were hundreds of thousands, and I would say millions, of Christians who got interested in it, and then we worked through that, only to come out the other side, and and I will also say this, that was the time of President Obama. That's the time of Russia coming down south. There were some significant things happening. I don't know if it had anything to do with the blood moons. That's up to the Lord. But there was a bunch of things happening, and a bunch of people started watching. We started this on Sunday nights here, and look at y'all still coming, and it's fun. So it's fun to watch because we know that there is a convergence of a bunch of things that are happening. I want to focus on the drought just for a little bit. I've been watching some of this for the last couple years. It is really getting out of hand. I've showed some pictures recently. I know I've done this, I think it was last week. I can't even keep up from week to week. But I wanted to show you a couple more pictures. This is in California. This is in Mexico. So I've showed you some other ones, other places. There's 600 large sinkholes in Turkey because of the drought. This is the Euphrates River. Oh, it's not available. They took it from us. I think I have another one. Oh, they took them from us. Isn't that interesting? Well, at least I got some snapshots of them. But it shows the Euphrates River. And so now think about this, connect the dots. The water for the Euphrates begins in Turkey. And Turkey's having droughts. And what does Revelation talk about drying up the Euphrates? Well, someday it's going to dry up. But the point is that if they're not getting water in Turkey, and Turkey is being blamed now for shutting off the Euphrates in a big way because they're not getting enough water up there, and they use it, and we've documented this as well, that they use it to say, well, remember the Turks said they've got their oil, we've got their water, let's do some trading. And so they're using water, it's called water wars against Iraq and some other places. So the Euphrates is very, very low, and so is the Tigris has been low for several years. India is the hotspot for COVID right now. Delhi is making makeshift funerals. Again, Jeff and Judy were talking about what happened in Brazil. The hospitals ran out of ventilators. They ran out of everything. There was, it was a disaster for them. It was a disaster for Colombia. It was a disaster for many, especially South American nations and some other places, African nations. And it's still a disaster. India right now is a complete mess. Staff are working around the clock while parks and other empty spaces are also being utilized for cremations. Families have had to wait hours before being allowed to cremate their dead due to the rise in demand. Deaths have been surging in India as a second wave of infections devastate the countries. The rising number of deaths, 380 were recorded in Delhi alone on Monday, has left crematoriums in urgent need of space. So just space to bury your people. Sony and I were looking at a picture last night, an aerial view, and I don't think I got that, but an aerial view, and I can't remember where it's at. But just, you could see the graves, just mass graves, hundreds of acres of just mass graves. It's horrible. Here's look at the curve there. Horrible. Keeping up with the new CRISPR, we've been talking about the DNA, how the scientists continue to work with the DNA. And I think, well, okay, I'll stop mentioning that for a while. And then they do something.
I see the word take with it here.
They take it to the next step, They just take it to the next step. Like, can we just stop talking and you guys quit messing with this stuff? The new CRISPR technology offers unrivaled controls of epigenetic inheritance. Scientists have figured out how to modify CRISPR's basic architecture to extend its reach beyond the genome and into what's known as the epigenome, proteins and small molecules that latch onto DNA and control when and where the genes are switched on or off. Now let's stop there for a second. Before they were splitting and they were inserting. Now they're going to be able to turn them off and on. Now I don't know about you, but that just sounds wrong. They're wanting to do it for good. They want to help people. Though genetic and cellular therapies are the future of medicine, there are potential safety concerns around permanently changing the genome, which is why we're trying to come up with other ways to use the CRISPR to treat the disease. Now, I had a video here, and I decided, well, I'm not going to use it, but I might use it some other point. But I listened to a couple people who are kind of heading this up, and people are calling them, you know, you're trying to play God, and the one woman says, I'm not trying to play anything. And they're not playing. You know, they're trying to do something good, okay? The guy who's the head of one of the organizations, and I'll show you what he says, because I don't really want to take him out of context, but I can say this, that they found mammoth bones, mammoth tissue, and not just the bones, but tissue, and he wants to recreate a mammoth herd of tens of thousands of mammoths. So they're not playing. We think they are. They're serious, and we'll continue to watch as they go crazy. So one of the things that they've done is they've messed with the DNA of I think 1 billion mosquitoes, and they're releasing them in Florida as we speak, I think. And what they want to do is these will mate with the natural mosquitoes and kill them off, is kind of the idea. So they've messed with their DNA, and that's what's happening. Pope's another thing where you think he's said it all and done it all, but here he's hanging a picture of naked Jesus. They have to cover him up there, and he's caressing Judas. He hung this in his office. And this is one of those things I had to go, okay, I want to know if this story is really true. And I went through and found out, yes, and this is exactly what he did. This is a strange thing. I don't think Jesus is caressing Judas at all. Judas went out and hung himself, and then Jesus went out and basically got hung. So this didn't happen. It's not in the scriptures. Don't go beyond what is written. And by the way, he's the son of perdition, and why would Jesus be caressing him? Because Jesus is going to be the Lord of wrath as well, and he's not going to be caressing his enemies like this. So it's just pathetic. It doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to do this kind of stuff, and yet he does it for whatever reason. This is where we're headed. This is a 71-year-old pastor in London. He took his Bible up there and was preaching to people about homosexuality according to the scriptures, and they arrested him there. Here is a minister in the Finland parliament, a Christian politician formerly charged over views on marriage and sexuality. She says, the Finland's prosecutor general has formally charged a Christian parliament member after she expressed a traditional view on marriage and sexuality. Päivi Räsänen, the country's former Minister of the Interior, is accused of hate speech over her comments in a 2004 pamphlet, a 2018 TV show, and a recent tweet. 3 charges have been leveled against her, each carrying a 2-year prison sentence. The 61-year-old was first questioned by police in 2019 after she criticized the Finnish Lutheran Church, of which she is a member, over its official support for an LGBT pride event. The 61-year-old said she would not stop sharing her views. I cannot accept that my voicing my religious beliefs could mean imprisonment. I do not consider myself guilty of threatening, slandering, or insulting anyone. My statements were all based on the Bible's teachings on marriage and sexuality. I will defend my right to confess my faith so that no one else would be deprived of their right to freedom of religion and speech. I hold on to the view that my expressions are legal and they should not be censored. I will not back down from my views. I will not be intimidated into hiding my faith. Several years ago, this was foreign to us. We would hear this stuff maybe in the Muslim world sometimes. We would hear some of this persecution happening anywhere but a democracy. It is happening over and over now in democracies, if you want to call it that, in the EU, in Canada, and I believe it's coming to our shores. It's a matter of time. If the Lord tarries, it is coming. It's still going to be very interesting. Every once in a while, I kind of want to stick some stuff in about the 2022 race coming up and the 2024 race. I'm just not going to do it for a while. If it plays out, wonderful. But we've already seen how that goes, and we've already seen the state of that our nation is in. Now, I was asked again the other day that here's the question: are we being judged? Did God judge us by having Biden become our president, or is He going to judge us because we elected him? And I said both. Both. Because when you got a problem in your community, God says, well, I'm going to blind you, or I'm going to turn you over to your own sins. And so we hired this guy. However that worked out, you can talk about voting fraud and all that other stuff, which I believe is still in the courts, still working itself out. It's not going to change anything. But he was allowed, remember Daniel chapter 2 and others, that he raises kings and deposes them. So he let us have this man. And then number 2, because of what he's doing against Israel, against the church, against his own nation, we're going to pay the price. I don't know if you've ever looked in the Bible in particular, but then looked at other nations. But isn't it interesting that the ruler of the nation, if the ruler or the ruling section of that nation is wrong and bad and goes against God and flies in the face of God, the nation pays. The nation pays. When the nation, when that ruling party repents, God blesses. Just ask Nineveh. Just ask Nineveh. So the whole question is our ruling party going to change? And right now, it's not good. I want to mention something again about President Trump, and I'm going to keep this on your scope here, okay? I'm going to keep this in front of you. What does the Lord say about the proud? He resists the proud, right? But gives grace to the humble. Now, President Trump was a good president for our nation, but he's a prideful man, and he's got a real problem with Paula White. She is a false teacher, and she is his primary religious official, counselor, okay? That's a problem. And some wonderful people, said her book was okay, and it's not. If you read in that book, she's got some major problems, and then I showed you a clip of what she said about Sun Myung Moon's wife, who was supposed to be Mother Eve and all this other stuff. I'm telling you, there's a real problem there, and God will not bless him if he's relying on that kind of religious doctrine. However, the way he stands for our nation, I would choose him as a president today. I would love to have him back today because of what he did. But remember, God has a plan, and he chooses our kings, okay? So if he's chosen Biden, just like he chose Obama, I remember talking to Gary in particular about this, that if he's done this, we know the mind of God. If he's allowed this, we know the mind of God. We know that we're in trouble, and we need to repent, okay? And repentance looks like throwing out Roe v. Wade, putting the Bible back in school, not coming down on the churches, and all this other stuff, and yet that's not happening. We have not repented. And so we need to start with ourselves and make sure that we are right with God, and we'll see what the Lord does with that, okay? She goes on to say, the more Christians keep silent on controversial themes, the narrower the space for freedom of speech gets. Now, again, John MacArthur is going to talk about this when we get to him. If you notice, John MacArthur did not really get in to the pro-Trump deal, you know. He likes President Trump, thinks he did a good job as far as that's concerned, but he's very concerned about the government and the church going hand in hand, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. And anyway, Alliance Defending Freedom's executive director Paul Coleman said the prosecutor general's decision would have a chilling effect on free speech. Freedom of speech is one of the cornerstones of democracy. The Finnish prosecutor's general decision to bring these charges against her creates a culture of fear and censorship. He said it is sobering that such cases are becoming all too common throughout Europe and America and other places now as well. So we want our freedom. We love the Constitution. We will fight for this country. You know, we'll do all those things. But at some point, we lose this country. We lose. John MacArthur said a couple months ago as well, I just remember this goes through my brain, I heard him say this, Christians lose once. Christians lose once. There's an apostasy coming, we're going to leave the planet, and the Lord is going to judge all the nations. Okay? So we have to understand, we actually win, but on the earth we're going to lose. They're going to come against us. According to the new census that came out, the red states have gained some seats in Congress and the blue have lost. People are moving out of those states. They're losing people. And they need to lose people. They're overhanded there, but anyway, and the red states are gaining people. Well, actually, South Dakota is gaining people as well. We haven't gained enough to get another seat, but there are lots of people moving to red states. Is the stage being set for a great deception? Now, I've been wanting to do a whole lesson on the UFO issue because it's becoming more and more an issue. Now, it always has been kind of in the background. But let's just read what happened this week. When it comes up, I'm just going to put it out there. At some point, I just need to do kind of a whole lesson on it, or at least a decent lesson on it. But according to the New York Times, more than 7,200 sightings were reported to the National UFO Reporting Center in 2020, and that represented an increase of about 1,000 from the year before. Sightings of unidentified objects in 2020 nearly doubled in New York. From the previous year to about 300 according to the data compiled by the National UFO Reporting Center. They also rose by about 1,000 nationwide to more than 7,200 sightings. Of course, that same New York Times article blames COVID for the rise in sightings. I'm 20 pounds overweight and I'm blaming COVID. We are being told that people have more free time on their hands in 2020 because of COVID. And we are also being told that the people spent more time looking up in the sky in 2020 because of COVID. First of all, who has the gall to even, who has the guts to even, well, here's one of the reasons. These days, COVID is being blamed for just about everything, and so it seems kind of natural to blame COVID for the increase in UFO sightings as well. And I almost started to believe the New York Times until I came across the numbers for the previous year. In other words, I believe that maybe COVID caused an increase in sightings. But then he went back to the previous year. It turns out that the increase in UFO sightings during 2019 was even greater than the increase in 2020. There was a rise in the number of North Americans who looked up into the sky in 2019 and found something that didn't look like a bird or a plane. The National UFO Reporting Center, which tracks calls and messages from people around the US and Canada about strange sightings in the sky, reported that it received 5,971 sightings in 2019, a jump from 3,395 in 2018. There was no COVID pandemic in 2019. So why did the number of sightings rise by more than 2,500 that year? Overall, the number of UFO sightings have more than doubled over the past 2 years. that seems rather noteworthy, doesn't it? It is starting to become increasingly clear that something is going on in our skies that defines rational explanation. By combing through thousands of reports in the government's database, Vice World News has uncovered dozens of recent UFO sightings from Canada and international airlines. They include a pair of WestJet flights near BC's Okanagan Valley that allegedly saw a bright white strobe type light above them on the night of March 16, 2017, and a pre-dawn January 10, 2015 encounter outside Regina, Saskatchewan, when multiple aircraft reported a very large object with a small white light in the middle, surrounded by a halo that appeared to descend from above 41,000 feet. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked, and I don't know if you've been keeping up with this, but this is national news. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked photos and video of unidentified aerial phenomena taken in 2019 are indeed legitimate images of unexplained objects. Photo and videos of triangular-shaped objects blinking and moving through the clouds were taken by Navy personnel, Pentagon spokesman said. She also confirmed that photos of 3 identified flying objects, one sphere-shaped, another acorn-shaped, and one characterized as a metallic blimp, were also taken by the Navy. There's one recent picture. This was declassified by the Navy, and they copped to this, that this was taken by a Navy jet pilot. And seeing this, there was another one just recently. It's a green photo. You can look it up. It's a green photo of a triangular-shaped picture taken. And what's happening with UFOs, I'll just briefly explain what I believe they are. I know a retired Navy jet pilot. He saw an alien. Now, he's a Christian. In fact, he's a pastor today. I can call him a liar to his face, or I can believe what he says. And he says that he thinks they're demonic. And that's what I believe, and I kind of always believed. Something is going on that angels, demons, fallen angels and demons are messing with our brains. Antichrist, well, that's the man, but Satan is setting us up for things to come. And we don't specifically know what these things are, but remember, let's just make this real clear. This goes back to the whole idea of Christ dying. Who did Christ die for? Us, earthlings. Okay? He didn't have to die or die somewhere else. Okay? He died once for the sins, by the way, as a caveat, for the sons and daughters of Adam. There weren't 2 creations of any kind of other man or woman. It was the sons of Adam. Paul makes that really clear. I don't think we need to really go through that. It's something that is satanic. It's something that is demonic and is a huge deception. Remember, there's going to be a huge deception coming up on the earth. I think it's been playing with us for a long time, and we'll just have to watch this out. I have another pastor friend who, a good friend actually I grew up with. He and his sister have seen demons, and I trust these people with my life. I would never want to encounter that, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, but the whole idea is this, that trustworthy people have seen some things, and we just have to try to explain it the best thing, that there is God and his hordes, and then there's the demons and Satan and his hordes, and they don't mix, okay? Let's talk about Russia, because they are the one, Turkey's bad right now too, but we just need to kind of keep up with Russia, because the United States and Russia, I tell you what, it's hard for me to kind of grasp really the reason why something is going on right now, and that's this. Biden and his team are going after things that have happened in the last century or more, and even in the last decade or more, and they're sanctioning states, they're punishing states, they're calling people names, they're picking a fight. Now, whether they should or not is one thing. We're going to talk about the Armenian genocide, and it was the right thing to do. They should have done this a long time ago, but the timing is very interesting. What Biden is doing is he's picking fights, and the world is not going to stand for it. And so we just kind of have to watch and see how this plays out. It's a big multi-level chess game, if you will. I want you to look at the nations here. Russia is up there, of course, in the big green spot, and then all around them are the old Soviet states, and they're working in these states in particular. They're working to try to take them back. Well, and I would say here as well. There and then somewhat over there. There was a big fight on the war. See that over here? There was a big fight, a clash, people killing armies during the last week here. So this whole thing is just continues to ramp up. This whole area surrounding Russia continues to ramp up. The United States is standing in the face of Putin right now in Russia right now and saying we're going to do something about it. The EU is standing up with us to do that. And we're just going to have to wait to see how this plays out. Let me show you. I've been telling you about some of the states that where the Russia and now some of their prior friends, or Soviet states in particular, are really splitting apart from each other. Russia and Tajikistan are creating a joint area defense system. That's down there as well. So they're coming together as a joint defense system, but watch this. Ukrainian border guards have not recorded any withdrawal of Russian troops from the borders of Ukraine. So remember, they moved in all those tanks, all those jets, all those missiles, all those troops, and then they said, and they have reported, we're going to leave in May. They haven't left yet. They haven't started leaving. Some are saying that the equipment is still there. There are some troops leaving. So that tells you that they would just have to come back and get in their tanks and roll across the border if that ever came to that. They have all their equipment stationed for a future war. I don't know if that's the case. We're going to have to see if they start taking this armor back with them. The Russians expel 3 employees of the Slovakia embassy. Russia expels 2 employees of the Lithuanian embassy. Russia expels 2, there it is again. I don't know why I did it. And yeah, I already said that as well. Kremlin made a list of unfriendly countries list. I think there was 2 that I missed. There was 2 other countries that they expelled some diplomats. Russia expelled some diplomats from. So remember last week it was stated that the Cold War is back in full swing, and that's what's going on. They're splitting up. They're really making a border between an us and them thing, and that's really kind of what's going on. Here's the unfriendly list that Russia has made and documented to the world. They put up this big board. You see the guys standing there. They put up this big board. The U.S., Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Georgia, Ukraine, Poland, the Czech, Slovakia, and the UK are now called unfriendly nations to Russia. So it's really entered the Cold War phase again. Russia fires a supersonic anti-ship missile. And when did they do this? The very time that the U.S. ships were coming back into the Black Sea, they fired this missile in the Black Sea. It's a supersonic missile. They wanted the United States and the West to show that, hey, we can take any of your ships out. And so they're really ramping things up. With Iran, the U.S. Navy fires warning shots on 3 Iranian fast boats that got too close. This is the second time in a few weeks that the Iranian boats have harassed U.S. ships, and they got too close. Here's a picture of one. They didn't fire any shots here, but that Iranian ship cut in front of the U.S. Coast Guard ship there in the Persian Gulf and had to swerve out of the way. And then here is where the U.S. ship fired on these boats because they got too close. And so things are just, let me just put it this way. It's very unfriendly in the Middle East, in the Caucasus, in Eastern Europe. It's just very, very unfriendly right now. I don't know if you heard this, but this guy, he needs to be pulled into court. Iran's foreign minister says John Kerry told him about Israeli covert operations in Syria. So when he was working for the Obama administration, he told them about the operations that Israel was taking against Syria and Iran in Syria. And so now this guy, this Iranian minister, he actually apologized yesterday for even leaking that. But he copped to it. He said that this actually did happen. I think there was, he said there was, let's see, I think there's more on this, yeah. Kerry previously been accused of colluding with Iranian leaders to undermine the Trump administration, is now a part of the Biden administration and has a seat on the National Security Advisor or Council as the special presidential envoy for climate. So he's climate, yeah, which is just strange. Kerry shocked Zarif by revealing that Israel had attacked Iranian targets in Syria more than 200 times. According to leaked audio obtained by the New York Times and other outlets. Zarif also spoke frankly about his limited power compared to the Ayatollah and the blow that the U.S. dealt to Iran by killing Soleimani in January 2020. So I think that they need to take him to court. Pompeo is pushing the issue. Secretary of State Pompeo is saying Kerry needs to go before a judge for this. This is absolutely ridiculous. He's a traitor. That's treason to me. Turkey's genocide blackmail. Now this is big news. This is big news because this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back between Turkey and the United States. And again, we're going to have to play this out. I'm not a prophet. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens here. But these relations between the United States and Turkey were strained already. Biden has canceled, Trump did too, but Biden then further canceled the F-35 program in Turkey. Turkey was making some parts for the F-35 engine. And so now the F-35 has been on hold to some extent, ran into a little problem there for a while. They'll fix that. But then Turkey was going to buy F-35s, but then of course you know that they bought some of the Russian S-400s. And when they bought Russian S-400s, they were going to use them to try to shoot down. What you do is if you have a weapon system from your friend, and then you have what they were doing is taking our old F-15s and 16s that they bought from the United States, and they were tracking them. They were using our jets to be tracked by Russian defense systems. This has been going on for a long time. But the Turks were going to get the F-35. That means that the Russians would have been able to learn how to track the F-35, its components, and all of that stuff. And so Trump said, you're not getting it. And then Biden, thankfully, said, you're not getting it. And so we'll see. So that's one problem that we've had with them. And besides him wanting to take over the Mediterranean and parts of Jerusalem and other things, this guy is a cretin. But what happened is, in 1917, I think, the Ottoman Empire was fighting the Russians, and when it was coming toward the end, it was actually, I think the war was still pretty much heated up. They conscripted Armenian men to come fight for their army, and then then threatened them, blamed them for conspiring with the Russians, and so they started killing some of these men. And then, especially toward the end, if I remember right, they started hoarding these people up and walking them off to slaughter. And so you can see them gathering them to the road here, and they were going to have to take this long march. People died along the way, people were shot along the way, and then when they got to the destination, they were slaughtered. And
Marched them into the desert until they died.
yeah. The Ottoman Empire killed an estimated 1.5 million. They're not sure. It's anywhere between 600,000 to 700,000 to 1.5 million. It's probably over a million. During World War I. On Saturday, President Biden called it genocide. This is one of the very few things that he did right. And this should have been done by the United States a long time ago. We've been friends with NATO. We could have overcome it better back then if we did it with a decent president. But we never did. Not even President Reagan should have done it a long time ago, because it was a slaughter. This is well documented. It's a move that could further strain relations with the U.S. ally. I got to stop there again because something comes to mind. I think about the convergence of things. Why is this happening now? Why does President Biden have to be the president now? Why does he have to pick on Putin now and call him a killer? Why does he have to call Turks killers now? Why is this happening now? It's a convergence of these things happening with the other things that are happening on the planet. It's a move that could further strain relations. The Ottoman Empire comprised many different ethnic and religious groups, but was largely controlled by Muslims. In 1908, a group called the Young Turks seized control, first of a society called the Committee of Union and Progress, and then that of the government. The CUP promised modernization, prosperity, and secular constitutional reforms. When World War I broke out, Armenians found themselves physically on both sides of the battlefront between the Ottomans and the Russians. The Ottoman government drafted Armenian men to fight, but when the military suffered heavy losses, it blamed them, accusing them of collaborating with Russians. The Armenian soldiers were disarmed and murdered by Ottoman troops. On April 24, 1915, the government arrested about 250 Armenian leaders and intellectuals. This is seen by many as the beginning of the massacre, and April 24 now marks Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. In the following months, most of the Armenian leaders were killed. The military forces forced Armenian villages from their homes on a long, cruel marches to concentration camps in what is now northern Syria and Iraq. There's just something spiritual about northern Syria and Iraq. Just ask David. Just ask Abraham. That's where all his enemies were. That's where Nimrod was, all of that stuff. It's an evil place. Many of them died. Listen, I'm not calling the people evil. There are evil people there, but there are Christians in those areas as well. Many of them died along the way. Others died in the camps of starvation and thirst. Meanwhile, irregular forces and locals rounded up Armenians in their villages and slaughtered them. So here's some more pictures. I think I only know one American Armenian.
There are quite a few over here. They've been the ones pushing this for years and years.
Yeah, there's quite a few in the United States. I think I met one in high school once, but yeah, like you said, they're here, and yeah. I almost didn't show this, but it's very interesting. So what's happening during the pandemic? Now this has been happening before, but what's happening with the pandemic is now science and technology and politics and even religion, to mention that. But now they're all trying to refocus and how can we overcome the pandemic? How can we use it? Necessity is the mother of all invention kind of thing. So see, this thing's moving, and what happens is they drive these things. Let's see if I have another. I thought I have another picture. So these things, they have these lined up. These orange things, gray and orange things, they have them lined up here. And so you're sitting at a desk somewhere, and you type in number 34625, and he goes over to bin number 52346, drives underneath there, picks up that bin, okay, and then goes to a certain location where they're boxing this, that, or the other thing. So this technology is, these warehouses are coming up, they're growing up and becoming a very big thing. Amazon may control 50% of the e-commerce market, but it still makes only 5% of retail. So it's important to keep things in perspective. That leaves ample room both for competition and for uniqueness. Nowadays, most retailers realize that e-commerce is the wave of the future. If you were to speak to them 2 years ago, they might have considered it as a side business, but today, we're talking about 50% of business eventually going online. I think that in the grocery space, we will hit 20% over the next 5 years, but it won't stop there. Once things reach critical mass, there will be no turning back. Now, I don't know about you, but yesterday, my mower broke. So I'm not a mechanic, but anyway, I had to become one. And I had to go find a part. And I went to everywhere and couldn't find a part. Now, I had done this prior. There's some other things, and I said, well, I can't find it. Order it online. Can't find it. Order online. That's happening more and more and more. Now, I was able to find this. I asked somebody by chance, and I tracked this part down. But the point is, and they only had one, by the way. So the point is that I can get something from Amazon, and I'm not promoting them right now, but I can get something from Amazon in 2 to 5 days if you have a little bit of patience, which by the way, for Americans is kind of tough. 2 to 5 days is a long time now, so it's getting tough. But the point is that you can buy almost anything you want online, and you can find anything you want online. You can even find slaves. So my point, see, that's what Revelation talks about. That the beast and the city, the new Babylon, you can buy anything. The rich will be able to buy anything they want. And to be frank, in the West, all you got to do is look it up, and you can. I was watching some arms sales that were happening in Arizona. Some automatic arms sales. You call up somebody, they meet you at Walgreens. You give them the money, they give you a box, and you've got an AR-15 or whatever whatever it is. So this kind of stuff is just the trafficking is horrible. What's happening with kids? I'm telling you what, it's really sad what is happening in the world. Just another thing along the AI line, Space Force Chief Scientist, the human augmentation is now necessary. What does that mean? In our business of national defense, it's imperative that we embrace the new age lest we fall behind our strategic competitors. Now, I've showed you some things. I've showed you some space systems where they're talking to each other through AI. The humans are still have to be involved, but just not as many of them. And so everything is just going computer, AI, digital coin, all that kind of stuff continues. So I did that. I was going to leave those slides out, but then I came across this one where Google and now Tel Aviv University, they launched an AI research program. No big deal, right? Except this. Turkey has one of the best new company, what they call upstart countries in the world. They have, remember, for whatever reason the Lord has blessed these people, they're very intelligent, and when they put their minds to it, they get it done. And so now Google and the Jews are working together on AI. You think they're going to come up with some stuff? You watch what happens with them now throughout this. A little bit, we're going to focus on Israel here a little bit. The missing link of an alphabetic writing. I find this kind of stuff interesting. You may find it boring, but this shard was found at Tel Lachish. Let me tell you about Tel Lachish. You'll find it in your Bible. This was the place Sennacherib was attacking when he sent a message to Hezekiah saying, we're coming to kill you. And then, of course, it was soon after that the angel came and killed 185,000. Okay? So Tel Achish, what they did to this city was they built up a huge ramp. They just take up a bunch of dirt and build this ramp. They finally build it all up and then conquer your walls. But a pottery shard discovered at Tel Achish archaeological excavation indicates that the idea that the dominant Egyptian culture spread alphabetic writing might not be accurate. The writing has been identified as a Proto-Canaanite. Okay, just around the Canaanite age or just prior to Canaanite. Now, before we go on, I have seen a picture of a clay jar that has, it doesn't have Hebrew language letters in it, but it has comments that sound Hebrew, like the judge, talking about judging and those kind of things. But it's using a Proto-Canaanite kind of lettering. Well, this is different, a little bit different than that, but along the same lines. Whose letters are based on Egyptian hieroglyphics. Although the partial nature of the fragment has presented difficulty in deciphering the writing, the researchers believe that they have identified the word slave, or possibly a person's name containing the same letters, and the early Hebrew word for honey. However, the experts noted that the meaning of the words could change depending on whether they were read from right to left or left to right. The new find cast doubt on previous hypothesis that the alphabet was spread throughout the region by the dominant Egyptian culture. Archaeologists working in Sinai in 1905 discovered a written inscription that dated to 1800 BC, and additional inscriptions to 1300 have been discovered in Levant. But until the shard from Lachish, there was a gap of several hundred years between the inscription from the Sinai and others in the Levant region, from where the alphabet is believed to have spread throughout what we now know as the Middle East and discovered into systems, developed into systems of writing that included early Egyptian culture. So they found a link in several hundred years of silence there, if you will. Just a reminder, the Levant is the Middle East, basically, especially the northern section from Jordan on up, okay? But basically the whole section is called the Levant. We'll stay on Israel. I don't know if you've heard, but there was a gathering the other day. Some Orthodox, not just priests, but Orthodox people got together. It was supposed to be tens of thousands of them got together. And so when their initial ceremony was over, they started going down this avenue. It's just this, you can see this kind of a boardwalk area, and it's going down at something like that probably. And there weren't steps; there were just kind of a little steps going down. But when they said that when you got to the bottom, if you had smooth shoes, it was pretty slippery. So when that first set of people got down to the bottom, it's said that there was some police directing or something, not really sure, but something happened to stop that the people initially coming to the bottom, and yet you have tens of thousands of people behind you, and they just kept pushing. And they kept pushing, then people fell, and then people died. 45 people have died. Labag Omer literally means the 33rd day of Omer. So 45 people that we know of have perished, and about 150 are injured. All right. Now, the Labag Omer literally means the 33rd day. According to the Kabbalistic tradition, which is the Kabbalah is a secret kind of a Jewish thought process and society. This day marks the Hilula celebration, interpreted by some as an anniversary of the death of a Rabbi Yochai the Rashbi, a sage in the 2nd century, and the day on which he revealed the deepest secrets of the Kabbalah in the form of the Zohar, The Book of Splendor, literally radiance, a landmark text of Jewish mysticism. So this guy was a Jew. He said that you can have a close relationship with God. Anybody can. And here's the secrets to it. And he wrote a book to it. And so this, when he died, now you have tens of thousands of people kind of following this unbiblical tradition, unbiblical festival, and those kinds of things. So that's what's going on. Now, what's happened is some people are saying, well, so those Jews, they're evil, and they deserve this, and so God gave it to them. And so you kind of get that whole thing. Before we go there, let's talk about something. First, here's who died: a 12-year-old, and his brother was 14, I think. Moshe Englander, 14, and his brother 9. A rabbi left behind 8 children. This other person, 24, left behind a pregnant wife and a 1-year-old child. This Moshe Levi, 14, was allowed to attend this event by his family as a reward for his studies. This rabbi was 37 years old and left behind 10 children. And then a 24-year-old became the father of a girl 2 weeks ago. So these are the kind of people that died there. The Jews, some of the Muslims are saying we gloat over the Jews' misfortune. Listen, tragedies happen everywhere. What happened in the United States either? I can't keep track of this, but something just happened a couple days ago. What was it? In the United States. Anyway, we're all in a fallen world, and this stuff's going to happen to all of us. This happened in 2015. Here you can see these hundreds of thousands of people. There's over, I think if I remember right, there's over 1 million people at, this is actually right here is not Medina or Mecca. This is not Mecca. This is about 2 miles from Mecca in Saudi Arabia in 2015. In this certain location, if I remember right, there's 220,000 Muslims, and you can see them coming down from 3 different areas, and they're coming down to one area and kind of being funneled into this area. And then what happens supposedly is at the opening, so if you got 3 rivers going into one, when it got to the one river, let's say, a bunch of new people who they didn't even know where they're from, they didn't know how to take part in this, all that stuff, they kind of entered the area, and when they came into the area, they stopped this flow. They got right in front of these people, and the people, 100 yards back don't know what's happening. So they kept pushing, and they pushing and pushing, and they killed 2,500 or 2,400 or 2,200. 2,200 people died. So this kind of stuff happens at these festivals. They've had a couple of these at Mecca where they're going around I think they call that the Cabal, if I remember right. They've got actually a black comet there in the middle of Mecca there, and they think this is something they need to worship basically at, and they go around and around, and sometimes people get crushed in those things as well. So they need to be careful. So this kind of plays in this whole concept, and I'm almost done here. This kind of plays in this whole concept of what's happening with the Jews. This kind of stuff is happening in the world. The Jews are being blamed for the COVID in some arenas. What was God doing? What was God? What was God? I think it's supposed to be doing during the Holocaust. Anybody remember Olivier Melnick? He came here once. He did the Seder for us about probably 5 years ago now, I think. He was here, and he writes this. Watch. In his seminal autobiographical work titled Night, Elie Wiesel addresses that question in his own way. After witnessing the hanging of a young child during the Holocaust, he wrote, "I heard someone groan, 'For God's sake, where is God?' And from within me I heard a voice answer, 'Where is he? This is where. hanging here on these gallows. Weasel wrote about his experience. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget these things, even were I condemned to live as long as God himself. Never. It's so difficult to understand these things. Where was God? I have a couple books in my library, you know. Is God the author of suffering? Where was God? Those kinds of things. And this is what Milnick writes. Upon reflection on the topic, ask the question, where was God? All we can do to show the love of the Messiah is follow the advice of Franco Mauriac and embrace those who have suffered a loss in the Holocaust. Remember, the Armenians probably, that's probably the largest genocide prior to 1948. One of them, anyway.
Things don't get recorded, so it's hard.
That's true, yeah. But it's one of the largest recorded, for sure. And then, of course, you have the slaughter of 6 million Jews. But Stalin killed 30 million?
42 million in Ukraine, he's credited with 65 million.
Yeah, Stalin killed anywhere between 30 and 70 million people. You know, so these things are going to happen, and you know, the Christians I think are going to get to a point even more so to where they say, well, if you serve a God like that, then I don't want to have anything to do with him. I've heard those statements. I've seen those statements before. That, listen, if a God can stop it and he doesn't, then he's an evil God. And that's not an evil God. God is he's using these things to call us back to redemption and call us unto him. I'm going to stop now. I'm going to pick this up next week, I hope. But here's a Jewish man. I'm just going to stop with this guy here. Who are they? The disbelievers, the West, the Jews, and the Christians. The land of Islam, and we will take it back. Islam says, we would like to thank you for all your settlements. So they're telling the Jewish people, thank you for all the settlements, because we're going to take them back. Because then we will find housing when we get back there. You know where this guy's preaching from? Florida. Thank you very much, because you will be running away like mice, because this is what your history teaches. If you are loyal to your land and you claim that it is your land, why did you leave it twice? That's a good question. Except they got kicked out. See? If they were loyal to God, they wouldn't have been kicked out. But they're saying, why did you leave? Go read your history before you come to us. We are tired of you. Every true Muslim should talk to himself about dying as a martyr for the sake of Allah. The Prophet said, whoever does not do that is a hypocrite. All day long you are bugging us that Jesus died for us. We don't believe that Jesus died for us. We don't even believe that Jesus died. Period. Yet. But here you are praising Jesus because he died for what he believed in to save you from your sins. Why is it forbidden for us to die for our belief? Why has it become a big deal? So you think what he's getting at? This Muslim in Florida is talking about dying for his beliefs as a martyr of a jihad. And if you cry every day or when you go to church because Jesus died and he was tortured and all that, if you really hate that and feel bad for Jesus, then Islam gives you the answer. After all these years that they lied to you and told you that Jesus died, and here we Muslims are coming to tell you that Jesus is alive. Isn't that interesting? See, nobody discounts the fact that Jesus ever lived. They always discount the fact that Jesus died on the cross and then he raised from the grave. So what do you do in return? You fight us. If you truly love Jesus, this is the religion for you. Ask the people who converted from Christianity. Wasn't this a deal breaker or deal maker? Jesus, you claim you love Jesus, and we love Jesus, but we love him more than you. But we love the Jesus that we believe in, and you love the Jesus they lied to you about. Two different Jesuses. And I'm going to stop there. So you see what the Muslims say. They do believe in Jesus. They preach him. They preach that he's coming back. He's going to come back, and he's going to come against the church because we say that he's the Son of God. So he's coming back as a prophet. That's what the Muslims believe. So if you ever get into a conversation with them, just understand that they do believe in Jesus and that he is alive and he's coming back and he's going to teach us we're all wrong. He's going to be the true prophet. Okay? We're going to stop there. There was some more interesting stuff. There's some John MacArthur stuff I wanted to get to, but we're well over time now. But basically, John is saying that, listen, don't get caught up in the politics. Don't get caught up in the things that are going on around you. Don't get in a fight about those kinds of things, because the real fight is coming. The real fight is coming against the church, and we need to be ready. Sonia has her hand up in the back.
I just want, before you pray, to remind you to pray for Judy.
Yes.
Her surgery went really well today.
Good.
They had her up and walking around.
Oh, good.
Due to stay till at least Tuesday.
Okay. Okay. So Judy, our piano player, one of our piano players, she broke her pelvis and went to surgery today. So, okay. All right, Lord, thank you so much again for your grace and your mercy, Lord. We love people who can work through these things and tell us about what is really going on. Like Olivier and like others who, Lord God, are working through these things on behalf of their people, the Jews, on behalf of the church. Lord, we really just want to know the truth. We want to be steadfast and encouraged. We want to be strong in these things. Help us to continue to understand them. Lord, bless these people who come and listen. Bless us, Lord God, and help us go out with a good word for other people to help others understand who you are and why we have a joy in our hearts and a blessing on our lips if they will listen. We love you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.